You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks 101 with Keith Engle. I'll have my guest Don Beebe, former wide receiver with the Bills, Panthers, and Packers, and currently a very successful head coach at Division III Aurora University. We'll talk to him about that. I never lost a conference game. It's amazing. And you'll remember Don for some famous things. We'll talk about that. One of the biggest plays that a losing team ever made in Super Bowl history. Don was a huge part of, and we'll talk about that and many other things with Don. I want to welcome everybody watching this morning on all our Facebook outlets, my TGI Sports Talk page, my personal page. It looks like I just got the TGI Sports Talk page up. It was failing in StreamYard, but it looks like we're live there now. We're also live on YouTube and Twitter. We're live on Roku on the National Streaming Sports Network there. And this interview will replay a bunch of times there as well. Thanks to all the groups that allow me to share, specifically John Gonzalez at the Sports Authorities, Flo and the gang over at Bottom Line Sports, Let's Talk Sports, where Flo airs his podcasts, and who else? Ken Krause will mention this morning at Golf Bud Sports of All Sorts. DDH, thumbs up to you. Ralph Williams over at RW Media. Check out Ralph's stuff, specifically the Sports Corner from Tuesdays, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Still got a little holiday hangover going on, guys, so forgive me. But check out Ralph's stuff. Been a guest there several times and always enjoy it. And I want to thank my guest from last week, Jim Graziano, a former South Carolina standout under the legendary coach Frank McGuire. We'll have Don Beebe in just a second, as I said, following a great line of NFL interviews you've had. Wesley Walker a couple of weeks ago, Richard Todd, next week. And we just secured Tony Collins, one of my favorite Patriots. I don't know how much we should talk about the Patriots with Don coming in, but one of my favorite Patriots, Tony Collins, coming in on the 10th. So great stuff coming up. But without further ado, great wide receiver with the Bills. We'll have a lot to talk about with their success. And I will say success. Some may not, but I always will, even being a Patriot fan, has gone on to a successful coaching career. He's been named the unsung hero recently by the Players Association. He's got a few books that he's written. Run for Glory. I've got another one written down here, 6 Rings from Nowhere. Also a movie in the works maybe, but we got a lot to talk about with Don Beebe. Good morning, Don. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Keith?
I am doing well. It was trying to overcome the post-holiday fog here in my head, but we're doing well otherwise. I'm glad you came in this morning. Are you on Central Time in Illinois? I never can figure it out.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
Illinois, Indiana always throw me off, those two states. And Arizona, because, they change like they don't change, I should say. Sometimes they're 3 hours, sometimes they're 2 hours because they don't change their clocks. So
so we're right on the edge of Central.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in. Again, a very inspirational story I think you've had through your life, both in college and the pros, and even afterwards. You've certainly continued to contribute and give back, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. Growing up, when you're growing up in Maple Park, I guess, wasn't it, Illinois?
Yeah.
How did Don Beebe foresee his life going as you started to get into your formative years, right, and get into sports and whatnot? How did you think your life was going to go? What were your aspirations when you were a kid?
That's a great question. Well, ever since I was a little kid, I grew up in in a family of faith. So my dad, we went to church 3 times a week. And so I knew God was very early in my life. And at that time, I just felt it was laid upon my heart to play sports. And so I knew I wanted to do 2 things at like 7, 8 years old. I wanted to play sports and I wanted to play for God. And it's ironic how my life has really turned out, because I should have never played in the National Football League. I'll be honest with you. Only playing 2 years of college football, one at a NAI Division II school, Shadron State. It's NCAA 2 now, but then it was NAI back in 1988. And then being the Bills' first pick in the 1989 draft, Keith, is only God can do that. I mean, that's just crazy. And as you said, it's turned into books and movie and stuff like that, because what happened to me is not normal. But you know, I've learned to know in my life that there are no odds with God. So I'm going to put limitations on that.
It's funny because as we go through this conversation, I know we'll come into some situations where you were in the right place at the right time. But, you know, my guess is you're going to be your faith is much stronger than mine. Or I don't know if stronger is the right word, different than mine, I say. But I always do believe that we're where we're supposed to be all the time in life, right? And obviously your life has been like that. You're a standout in high school, but you know, not the biggest guy in the world. You were certainly a fast. If I read right, when you were at in college, you ran like a 6, and we don't hear 60 times a lot, but usually it's 40s and 100s. But 6.3 in the 60 sounds really fast to me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I ran a 6. It was at the Air Force Academy in 1988, spring of 1989, actually. And I ran a 6.14 60, which at that time was 4 100 seconds off the national record. Now, what people don't know is I never went to practice. The track coach at Shadron asked me if I would run track, and I said, I can't. I'm getting ready for the draft. He said, no, just show up for the meets. And I said, okay. So I never went to practice. I just went to the track meets, and I landed up almost breaking the national record but it was, you know, I always use this, you know, the 40 is different than track speed. Track speed to me is 100, 200, you know, 400. Those are track guys. I was a football speed. So 40-yard dash to 100-meter dash are 2 completely different races. For example, remember who Mike Powell was? Mike Powell at one time broke the
he was a
sprinter. He was a triple jumper, won the Olympics in the triple jump.
Right.
And I raced against him in what was called the Jeep Superstars, ABC's Jeep Superstars, all, you know, wide world of sports back in the day.
I remember the superstar competitions
with Frank Gifford was doing the deal. And anyway, we're down in Cancun, and I raced against Mike, and I beat him in 40. We were dead tight at 60, and he blew me away at 100. So that's the difference in track speed and football speed.
You ran track in high school. You didn't run track in college, except for that that instance, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you? I mean, as you're in college, or I'm sorry, when you're in high school and thinking about college, did you have Did you have options other than? I know at first you went to Western Illinois, and then you went to I'm going to say the name wrong.
Shadron. Yep.
Okay. Shadron. Okay. What were your options limited, or did you have some other choices where you could have gone?
Yeah. No in football, and yes in basketball. I had one option. I had one option in football, and that was Western Illinois. That was the only school that came after me. And then in basketball, I actually had 4 or 5 offers. Almost went to our Arkansas Tech. You know, it's funny is my passion really as a young kid was basketball, and I loved basketball, and I wanted to be the next Pete Maravich, you know, and but yet I kind of fell into the football thing late in high school when my dad forced me to go out and play football.
Yeah,
that was back in the day when dads forced kids to do things, you know. You know, he gave me an option. He says, either you're going out for football, or you're going out for cross country. You're not going to come home and just sit around. Well, I'm not going to run more than 40 yards. So cross country was certainly off the table. And I went out for football and loved it. And I fell in love with it my senior year in high school. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. Even though I bebopped around a little bit, I went to Western. Then I landed up playing basketball at Aurora University. It was Aurora College. back in 1983. I played basketball one season in 1983, and then landed up. Now I'm their coach in football.
Well, that's ironic. And it explains why I kept finding the colleges you went to, and Aurora was listed, and I couldn't find any statistics anywhere for Don Beebe.
Yeah, they didn't have football at that time. That was 83, and they brought football in at Aurora College in 86. So I was already gone to college back to Western. I went back to Western, and then was out of eligibility, landed up at Chadron State. And the reason I went to Chadron, people ask me, how'd you get all the way 15 hours away from home in the northwest corner of Nebraska, which is about an hour and a half south of Mount Rushmore, which is in Rapid City, South Dakota. Yeah. So it's 8 hours from Omaha. Okay, so don't think Omaha; it's the other side of the state. Well, how'd I get there? Well, the head coach, when this coach that was a head coach at Chadron in 1988, well, in 1983, when he recruited me out of high school, he was the receiver coach at Western Illinois, and that's. By the time I bebopped around, and that was 5 years later, he was the head coach at Chadron. He said, "Oh, come out here and play." So I had 1 year left, and the next thing you know, Keith, I was drafted by the Bills. It's just a crazy story.
You found some interesting places to end up playing football for sure. Some of the coldest places in the country, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah.
You were a hero at Chadron. I mean, they named the field for you. You're in their Hall of Fame. I mean, you set records. I don't know that they've been broken. The research I didn't say they'd been broken. You still hold all those records at Chadron?
I hold some of them. I know I still hold the record for most touchdowns in a game. I had 5.
Yeah.
But you remember there's a guy that came along. His name was Danny Woodhead. Danny Woodhead played 10 years in the league.
Danny Woodhead very well from our Patriot days.
So Danny, I think the two, before me now, when I went to Chadron, I asked them, has anybody ever come to, going to the NFL, because I knew I had NFL scouts looking at me when I went to Chadron in 88. And they said, oh, yeah, a guy named Dub Miller in 1935. I was like, okay, well, that's a great track record. So I was the first guy, and then came Danny Woodhead. So we're really the two guys mainly played long careers in the NFL.
Well, now that I know that, Danny Woodhead has got to get on the show, and he's got a great shadow to sit in because he doesn't have the numbers, I'm sure, at Chadron that you had, or in the NFL, by the way.
Well, real brief, Danny Woodhead has all the records rushing. He was a running back. I was a wide. So, oh, man, he broke Barry Sanders' record for most yards in a career in the NCAA. Yeah, he won. I think, what do they call it? The Outland Trophy or something like that? He won it back-to-back years, which that's crazy.
That is crazy. Well, yeah. Danny was good cog for the Patriots I'll play with the Bills, I believe, as well, for a bit too. So Danny got around the NFL. Speaking of that, actually, as you grew up in Illinois, who did you root for? Who was your team, and was there a player that you're like, I want to be that guy?
Yeah, no, great question. I grew up a Bear fan, unfortunately, playing for the Packers. I'm no longer a Bear fan, so let's just throw that out there. My hero growing up was Walter Payton. I think Walter Payton epitomized, and he really still is, because he epitomized everything a person and a player should be. Dedicated to the team. It wasn't about him. Very humble in his approach. Just a fun-loving guy that was like 10 years old playing in the backyard, but yet he was playing in front of 80,000 people. And that was Walter. And I had the fortunate ability to train his son, Jared Payton. Yeah. Which was so I got to know Connie and Jared through that, and they're really good people.
That was after Walter had passed on, or
yeah, Walter had already passed. Yeah,
good person. No, I don't think it's there's a good reason the humanitarian award is named for Walter Payton. From everything I know, Walter. So, what other who are the other influences in your life as you started towards, getting to be we even call it a big time athlete, even playing Division III, right?
Well, outside of football, obviously my faith and then my father were big, was big for me because coaching young boys at high school for 14 years and then now coaching young men in college, it gave me two great examples. Now, my coaching style is hopefully a strong reflection of my mentor, Coach Levy, how to run a program, how to treat men with respect and get respect back. You don't get respect. You have to earn that. players will never care what you know unless you know how much you care. So you gotta, and that was Coach Levy. Speaking of that, we just celebrated his 99th birthday. Cornelius Bennett,
God bless him. Yeah.
Herman Thomas, Jim, Steve Tasker, and all these guys came back and into Chicago. We met downtown and took him to dinner for his 99th birthday. So it was kind of cool.
A very fun video of that. Somebody had videoed it and put it on Facebook. It was really cool. He looks great for 99 years old.
He's an amazing human being. I mean, let's face it. Probably the most humble Hall of Fame person you could ever meet. No doubt. Now, as far as X's and O's in the game of football, Mike Holmgren was amazing. He knew X's and O's as good as anybody. And obviously his protege is Andy Reid, who I sat next to for 2 years as he was the tight end coach in Green Bay when I was there. And he's just an incredible human being as well. And then as far as wide receiver and just understanding the craft of, I could argue the greatest 2 wide receiver coaches in NFL history. I had Charlie Joyner in Buffalo, played 18 years with the Chargers, and Hall of Fame guy. And then, by the way, I had this guy named Sherm Lewis, who was the offensive coordinator, but he taught me a lot of things as far as wide receiver. And he was the wide receiver coach to, the Jerry Rice. So I just had 2 great guys to learn from as far as that craft. But when it comes to just X's and O's, Mike Holmgren, when it comes out to run a program and treat people, Coach Levy is incredible.
Excellent. Real quick, anybody putting comments up, we'll get to those before we get out of the show. Sometimes they get out of context, and I don't want to go too far back and forth, so we'll get to everybody. I do want to point out to Don that the reach of the show is so great. We got Michael Gott over in the UK, who's we have quite a few viewers that tune in from the UK, and they love their football, their American football over there in the UK. I got to tell you, so happy to see Michael here with us today. Let's talk about getting drafted by the Bills. 3rd round draft pick. Again, coming out of a small school like you did, it's hard to get noticed. How do you get noticed and become a 3rd round draft pick in the NFL?
Yeah, again, another good question. How does a guy come from NAI Division II Shadron State and then be a team's first pick in the NFL? Okay, well, first of all, I go back to God. There was a guy by the name that God used. His name was Bill Giles. Now, Bill Giles was what they call a combine scout. He wasn't an NFL scout for any one team specifically. His job was to go around the country, and he had the Midwest, and he had to work out guys. And he needs to find who could be the top 300 guys to get invited to the show, right? That back in Indianapolis at that time. Yeah. And it was a Hoosier Dome then in the 80s. Well, how in the world is a guy from Shadron State going to get invited to that? Think about that for a second. That's crazy.
It's not a lot of players given the number of Division I schools, right?
So this guy came in, I want to say it was probably late December, early January, and worked me out. He had been doing it at that time like 30 some years. And at the end of the workout, and to his dying day, he actually never told me what I ran, but his wife at the funeral gave me the stopwatch he timed me in, which is kind of cool. And I still have that stopwatch.
On the time? Was it still on the time?
No, it wasn't still on time.
Oh, okay. That would have been
that would have been cool. But he timed me in the 40, and he sat me down at the end of it. He said, Don, he says, man, I've been doing this for a long time. He says, I've never timed anybody this fast on my watch or have this great of a workout. He says, I'm going to do everything I can to get you into the combine. He says, I'm going to give you my highest grade I've ever given to anybody. And I was like, think about that. How many guys that he's probably seen over 30 some years, and he's telling me, that's just insane to think about. Well, 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the combine people, and I got invited. And I had to drive up to Rapid City for 2 hours, catch a puddle jumper to Denver, to O'Hare, to Indianapolis. It's quite the deal. And and this is kind of a funny story. I went into the combine, had no clue what to expect. You talk about somebody that's so naive walking into something that is incredible. There's Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, you name it. They were all there. Every GM, every head coach in the NFL, there were 28 teams at that time, were there. And all I did is walk in with my jeans on and a shirt and my backpack and a coat because it's cold. And I walk into my room at the Crown Plaza, which is right down the street from the Hoosier Dome at that time. And my Mike Barber was my roommate. He played wide receiver at Marshall University. And I walked into the room, and no sooner did I walk in the room and we shook hands and the door knocked, and it was a concierge of the Crown Plaza. And this lady had 2 Nike shoe boxes. So I opened the door because I was up, and I grabbed the boxes, and these are for Mike Barber. I went over to give him the mic, and Mike goes, and I said, "What are these?" He goes, "Well, these are my shoes that my agent sent me to run the 40 in, tomorrow." And I was like, "Agent? Track shoes?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You don't have an agent?" I said, "No, I didn't even know I needed one at that time." Okay. So, and then he goes, "Well, what are you going to run the 40 in tomorrow?" And I looked down at my shoes, and I said that my high school fishing shoes, my old ASIC high school fishing shoes, and believe this or not, Keith, and this is the honest truth, if I had a shoe in front of me, I could show you, is that the right sole halfway was unglued. So when I ran, it flopped. And I ran a 4.25 in a flopping fishing shoe. So that's kind of a funny joke that went around the NFL for a while. And I broke at that year, and I say this not to brag, but I say this because this had to happen. Is I ran a 4.25 at the same time that Deion Sanders ran that year, and we broke the all-time record. Didn't know it at the time. And that record stood for 17 years until Chris Johnson of the Titans broke it when he ran a 4.23. So that had to happen. If that doesn't happen, there's no way I'm getting drafted. But you break an all-time record in the NFL from middle of nowhere, Nebraska, that takes notice now. And 21 teams, I had to do 21 personal workouts over the course of the next month and a half, 2 months before the draft. Crazy.
Do you think the combine, in some ways, I feel the combine has lost some luster because so many players skip it. But then I think it's maybe even more important because more guys like you get a shot to be seen, right?
Yeah, no, for guys like me, it's an absolute must. If I don't go to the combine, nobody knows who I am. Yeah. I would have never. But for guys that everybody knows, if you play at Alabama or Georgia or whatever, and you're a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, what's the sense really? Okay. So, but if you're a middle of the road or certainly a no-name guy, you have to go. I mean, you have no option. Now, It has become way more publicized than it was. That in 89, this was been April or February of 89. There was nobody could get in. If you remember, nobody could get in the dome. No media, nobody could get in. They would all wait outside the doors. Only people that could get in is you had to have an NFL pass. So you had to be an NFL personnel, coach, GM, whatever, or an invite, which was about 300 players. And it was Deadsville when you walked in there. And it was just a 3-day workout. Then now, I mean, it's a commercial. I mean, it's just so commercialized, and I mean,
it's every minute of it on the NFL Network, right?
Yeah. So that's why I didn't know what I ran in the 40-yard dash, because nobody knew. What they reported on ESPN that night wasn't true. And how I found out, this is kind of funny, is in 2000. Now I retired in spring of '98. Okay, after 9 years in the NFL, I said it was time to go. I retired, so I started a business called House of Speed. I started training athletes and stuff like this. And I was at the combine in 2002 or 2003. So I'm training some guys. Now I'm sitting in the box, and I'm up there with Tony Dungy and Bill Polian. Bill Polian at that point was the GM of the Indianapolis Colts. Well, he's the one that drafted me in '89 when he was the GM of the Bills. So I know Bill very well. And we're sitting there, and he looks over at me and he goes, "Hey, Beebs, you still hold the 40-yard dash record." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, you and Deion ran 4.25. I didn't know that until then. So it was kind of a really well-kept secret back in those days. Now everybody knows what guys are running the second they cross the line. It wasn't that way in '89.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even then, so your success there running what you ran, I mean, did you foresee being picked in the 3rd round that high? Again, fairly high in my mind. Yeah.
Well, again, I when I got back to Shadron after the whole workout there for 3 days, I didn't really realize what had happened. I literally walked home to Shadron. I got to what we call the mother-in-law house. We had a small house, 800 square feet. It was, we were college students, and the Oakland Raiders, they were the Oakland then, and the Green Bay Packers were literally on my doorstep of my door waiting for me.
Interesting.
I was like, yeah, now at that time I was like, oh God, what are you guys doing here? He goes, well, you caused quite a stir there in Indianapolis. And so from there on, every day, pretty much I was getting pulled out of classes to go work out for some team. It was crazy. 21 now, of course, of, a month and a half. And at that time I knew I had to get an agent. So I got Bob Lamont, who was the perfect person for me. And just so you know, Bob Lamont is one of the greatest agents of all time. He had Mike Holmgren. He has Andy Reid. He had a lot of players at that time, but he got away from the players. Now he's into all coaches and GMs. One of the most profound people you'll ever know. That was my agent. I couldn't have got a better agent. So with that said, he told me that I was going to go anywhere from the second or fourth round, but I thought that was kind of crazy until I got the call from Coach Levy.
It was Coach Levy that called you. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
So and that leads me in. So you get drafted. You go to a team that is coming into its own after kind of a down period in Buffalo.
Yeah,
and you're going to play for one of from the outside looking in, one of the most eclectic coaches there could possibly be in NFL history. I mean, you see quoting Shakespeare in the locker room. Tell me about playing for Marv Levy and what it had to be like.
He was, you hear sometimes players talk about their coach as a father figure. I mean, I had a great dad. Nobody can replace my dad. But Coach Levy was almost like grandpa. He was just an amazing, and still is, an amazing man. Just like I said, very humble, extremely intelligent. And he'd quote scripture, but he would quote, Winston Churchill and people like that quite often. And he didn't have to read a piece of paper to go through this whole poem. I mean, he just, said the whole thing right there. It was really, really fun to listen to him and be a part of him. But I couldn't, let's just say this, when it came up on the screen, Buffalo Bills draft Don Beebe, I didn't really care. Personally, I didn't care. I just knew that wherever it was going to be was where God wanted me to be and all that. And then my family was like, Buffalo, snow. Oh no. I couldn't have gone to a better place. I mean, Buffalo, and then to end my career in Green Bay, it's like, I mean, can you pick two better places to play football than Buffalo and Green Bay? No way. You can always say to yourself, if I was to do it all over again, most people would say, man, I would change this, I would change that. Yeah. I wouldn't change one thing.
Not a thing. There's not a place you wouldn't like to have played. Never.
No, not one thing. I mean, I would have loved to have won a Super Bowl with Buffalo just to experience the Bills people. But, I experienced it enough to know that's family. I mean, I'm telling you, it's family. Those people are incredible people.
And we're gonna get into that too in a little bit here. And I have a positive spin, which I know a lot of people don't necessarily have a positive spin on those years. I do, even as a Patriot fan. Just to stick with Coach Levy for a second, special teams coach. Why do special team coaches succeed as head coaches so often when other coordinators seem to fail? At least it seems that way from where I sit. Is there something?
First of all, I don't think it's so much of a special teams or an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. You have to have a certain personality, to be a head coach. And the number one thing I think that every great head coach that I had two things. Okay. A, you knew there was a line you didn't cross. And if you crossed it, there's consequences to pay. It didn't matter if you had number 4 or number 12 on the back of your thing or a player that was never going to play. And if you don't know number 4, that's Brett Favre, and number 12 is Jim Kelly. So it didn't matter. I mean, there's a price to pay. And at the same time, okay, you knew that coach really cared. Okay, you knew the organization cared. The NFL, you know that the NFL, the organizations care. You look at the 49ers and you look at the Bills and the Packers and throw Dallas in there. I mean, I can't stand Dallas, but they really support their players and the team and the organization from an owner's standpoint. You look at the Bears. I'm sorry, the Bears they're not good, and it all starts at the top. I don't say that to be mean or anything. It just it is the way it is. You got to spend money to make money. And so, but going from a coach's standpoint, what makes a great head coach is that the players are bought into what the coach says every day. They're just bought into what this guy says. They're not rolling their eyes. They're not like, whatever. They're not getting bored. they're just inspired on a daily basis. And when you're listening to Winston Churchill, I mean, you would think, Winston Churchill, what's that got to do with football? But the way he did it was just attractive. I mean, you love the guy. You go through a wall for the guy. And I think that is, and when you're still going to dinner with the guy and he's 99 years old and they fly in from all over the country. I mean, Andre Reed came from San Diego. We had like 9-10 guys that took him to dinner. I mean, that's family, and that's rare in sports. I'll be honest. That's really rare.
It is rare, probably rarer today than even then. But as far as that team, again, they were just getting over the hump when you got over the hump your second year. I know you missed that Super Bowl, but there were a ton of great players, obviously, on that team. Who were the real leaders in that clubhouse? Or was it just a family and everybody led everybody? I mean, you got to have leaders, though, don't you?
Well, I would say, the underlining guys. I mean, they're well-known guys, Pro Bowl guys. I think the mouthpiece for the defense would have been Darryl Talley. Okay, I think the mouthpiece when he spoke was Kent Hall, the center.
Yeah.
So I think that Darryl kind of spoke more than Kent. Kent was kind of a quiet guy, but when Kent did speak, I mean, it was profound. I think those, and there's a lot of leaders, but those were probably the two rocks. I will say this, though. I think it's something that we somewhat lacked when it got to the Super Bowl. And what I mean by that is this, going to 4 Super Bowls, the pressure started to mount. You lose the first one. Yeah, we could have won. And, it was a great game and all that. And then we go up to Minnesota and we get blown out. You could say the loss, the helmet and the whole thing, that had nothing to do with it. But people, the media, it was a frenzy. That's why you lost. No, it wasn't. Okay. And then you go to Dallas and we play Dallas and we're playing out in Pasadena. And it just unraveled. I mean, 9 turnovers. Think about that. 9 turnovers in one game. There's no way you're winning this game. What resulted in to be a decent game through first half or so just was a blowout.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, and this is where the analogy comes into Green Bay, is the fourth one. We go into it and we're winning at halftime. I think it's 13-10, and we're controlling the line of scrimmage against the Cowboys again in Atlanta. And we come out and we get the ball first, and we're like, okay, let's just take this down, score. We felt very confident, and let's go up 10 and put this way and finally win a game. And then Leon Lett, believe it or not, knocked the ball out of Thurman Thomas's hands, and we fumbled it on like the 3rd or 4th play of the first drive of the second half. And James Washington, the safety of the Dallas Cowboys, picks it up and scores a touchdown.
Yeah.
Well, now we're down 4 points, mind you. You come to the sideline, the whole half is still in front of us. We're down 4 points. Dead quiet, deer in headlight look, nobody saying anything, nobody inspiring anybody. It was just like, here we go again mentality.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you fast forward 2 years. I'm with the Pack. We're playing New England. Sorry. And we go up early, 10-0. Next thing you know, Bledsoe hits 2, I'm sorry, I got smoke alarm going off in my house here.
As long as you don't have a fire. If you got a fire, don't start.
Yeah, I don't think I do. But and Bledsoe hits 2 big touchdowns, and next thing you know, we're down 14-10.
Yeah.
Well, you come to the sideline now, and it's completely different attitude. Okay, Leroy Butler, Eugene Robinson, Brett, Reggie. I mean, even myself at this time, we're all just like, guys, we're fine. We got this. Okay, we're a better team. Next thing you know, we're up 27-14 at halftime. Well, what was the difference? It wasn't talent. Buffalo had more talent, believe it or not. I mean, look at all the Hall of Famers off that team. Yeah. And off Green Bay, you got Brett Favre, Leroy Butler, and Reggie. Okay. Now, what was the difference was the mindset. And this is what I want to teach kids all the time. It's what you think and how you play with your attitude and your mindset that wins football games. It's not talent. Okay. Throw talent right, especially in the Super Bowl and the big games. Everybody's talented, right? Who wins it? The people that are stronger mentally. And Buffalo did not do that for whatever reason. You could say lack of, leadership in that game because, we were down 35-3 and came back and won against Houston. So obviously we had resolve and we had leadership then.
Yeah.
We won so many games in the 90s that we had to have some kind of leadership. We did. But when it came to the Super Bowl, it was just different for us. We struggled with.
I have this thought, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, getting to 4 straight Super Bowls in the first place is a great achievement. Nobody's ever done that. No, very few people want to talk about that or do talk about that. They focus on the losses, which is human nature, right?
Yeah.
But I have this theory that if Scott Norwood makes that field goal, I know you didn't get a chance of playing that game, that specific Super Bowl, I believe, but I have this theory that if he makes that field goal, you guys may very well have won 3 Super Bowls, 2, 3, whatever number. I feel like you wouldn't have had that because you mentioned perfectly that it's like, here we go again. Yeah. Anytime something happened, right? You think that's.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I broke my leg December 23rd in the Miami game right before the playoffs started that year. So I didn't get to play. I do agree with what you're saying. I do believe that if we win that game, that we probably run off 2, maybe 3 more. It's possible. Okay. Because it's all confidence. That's all it is. It's like missing a 3-foot putt and you go to the next hole, you're probably going to miss another 3-foot putt.
Yeah.
Chances are. I will say this, that what most people don't know is Scott Norwood's kick. He hit that exactly how he wanted to kick it. How do I know that? Because Frank Reich, who is the holder, was my roommate. And I remember talking to Frank that night, and he said, Beebs, when he came off his foot, there was no doubt it was going in, because in pregame, when he was warming up and kicking, every ball had a slight hook to it. And so when he hit it, it would slightly come in. So he hit that, and think about it, it was 3/4 up that field goal.
Yeah.
Okay. So he boomed it. He could have made it from 60 easy.
Yeah.
So, but it just, for whatever reason, it just stayed straight and it didn't move big time. But Scott Norwood hit that right where he wanted to hit it. It just didn't go in. Nobody, just so you know, nobody from the organization of the Bills players blamed Scott at all.
How did the fans react to Scott after that?
Well, all you have to do is go back, if you can find it on YouTube or whatever. When we came back and we flew, and you saw everybody downtown, and all the Bills guys went down there, and it was just jam packed with thousands of people. And what were they saying? They were yelling out Scotty, Scott. They wanted to talk to Scotty, and Scotty got up, and it was emotional for him. I mean, it just was. I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He cares, right? And the Bills players love Scotty Norwood. The fans love Scotty Norwood. The true fans, let's just put it that way. Yeah. And there's a lot of them. Love Scott Norwood. And when he comes back, he's a very popular guy.
I don't know. And again, you can speak to this better than I can. Obviously, I don't know if there's another city hosting a NFL team that would have reacted to 4 straight Super Bowl losses the way Buffalo had. And just, Chris Burton always talks about, what was it? A circle in the wagons, right?
Yeah. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody doesn't like the Buffalo Bills. And the fans, I think, are part of that. They didn't really, never turned on your team at all, or the players. Even that was the first one, but even through all of those travails, did you feel negativity at all during that time from the fan base? Some of them, obviously, there's going to be some.
You're going to do that if you win the Super Bowl. You're going to get that.
Well, that's true.
It's like, I've learned one thing as a coach. Every time you make a decision, it's like a referee blowing the whistle. Half the people love you and half the people hate you. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So that's why you, as a coach and a player, you got to get out of the realm of trying to please people. Okay. Because you're going to fail. But you understand, you focus on the real fan, the real Buffalo Bill fan, their family. I will tell, they are absolute family. And just so you know, and knowing a lot of players from a lot of different teams and what they came from, is Buffalo is unique in the sense of this, that when you go out in the public, and I would say Green Bay is like this as well, that when you go out in the public, people in other cities with other NFL people, it's like, what can you do for me when you're in these other cities?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What can you do for me? Can you sign this? Can you do this? Can you, whatever. But when you go to Buffalo or Green Bay, it's like, what can I do for you? You want dinner is free.
So there was dinner in Buffalo?
What's that? I don't know if I've ever. I don't think I ever have. It's just the people are nuts. And even at 60 years old, I go back and it's like you never miss a beat. When I got with the guys, back in September, I think it was September. We celebrated Coach Levy's 99th birthday. When we got back together, the 10 of us, it was like going back in 30 years and like we never missed a beat. See, that's what family does. And all it is just catching up on what's going on in your life. But but that's what makes Buffalo.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's just if I was to, my son played, in the league as well. I wish he could have played at one of those two teams because it's extremely unique. It's from a fan base.
I got to tell you, obviously you're ingrained in Buffalo and NFL history for one play in particular we all know about, which ironically you were losing 52-17. And I've been watching the NFL. I've been watching sports since, the last 65, well, not out of the womb, but, 55 years anyway, plus. And I can't think 52-17. You talked about the loss to the Cowboys in Pasadena, right? That was the Pasadena game.
Yeah.
Leon let it's always gets longer. I don't remember how far he ran, but it feels like you chased him down 90 yards to knock the ball out of his hand at the 1 yard line. And I cannot think of another player, and I mean this in all sincerity, another player I've ever watched play that would have chased him 90 yards or whatever it was and knocked that ball out. And it's ingrained you, not I'm sure just in Buffalo, but in NFL lore forever. And I'm sure you've talked about this a gazillion times, but what were you thinking at that moment?
Well, literally, what was I thinking? I was doing a fly pattern down the left side of the field. There's 52-17, 4 or 5 minutes left of the game. We're not coming back. We're not going to come back. This ain't going to be a Houston game that we just did a couple weeks before that. We're going to lose. And so I always would say this. My dad used to say this. Coach Levy used to say this a lot too, that your character will be revealed in every game that you play. More importantly, your character, who you really are is going to show when things aren't going well. Because everybody's a great person when things are going great.
Oh,
right?
Sure. Easy.
But when things are tough in life, and we're talking football here, but let's just talk about life. When things are tough in life, that's your true character. I do a lot of men's conferences and speak all over the country on men's retreats, conferences, and stuff like this. And I love those because, they know me for this play. So it gives me instant credibility for whatever reason. It just does. And I always say what you are at home is what you are. Coach Levy would say what you are on the field is what you really are. Your character is going to be revealed. And I always say that when the ball was, I was running a fly pattern, and when the ball hit the ground, I saw it was fumbled. Automatically, Big 78 picks it up, and he starts running for an apparent touchdown. This is where character is revealed, because I always believe that character is revealed within a split second, meaning how you react to something is really how you are. Really, you could be in your house, right? The kids are just driving you crazy. How you react to that is really what's inside you as a person. Think about it.
Right.
When you split-second decisions are your character. When you have time to think about it, most people, especially good-natured people, good high-character people, you have a minute or an hour or a day. Most of us are going to make the right decision, right? But when you have a split second, that's your real character. So, I just took off, and people, they would always say, why? And I was like, 2 words, my dad.
Yeah.
Man, my dad raised me that giving up was not an option now. Whatever, matter of fact, it was so ingrained in me that whatever you put on your plate at dinner, you were finishing that. You weren't scraping it into the garbage can or feeding the dog under the table. You were eating whatever you put on the plate. So it became starting a sport. I see so many kids. Look at the transfer portal. There's a good example. Kid plays 1 year, 2 years. Wow, it's screw loyalty. I'm going to go to somewhere else, right? No, my dad would never allow me to do that. Whatever you start, you finish. Now, there's some circumstances that I'm okay with, but for the most part, the transfer portal is just going to ruin sports. You see coaches dropping out all the time. Look at the guy from Miami, the basketball coach just dropped out. It's just crazy. So, so when you're literally, I was thinking, people, this is the main question I get is, what were you thinking when you were running down the field right in front of the bench of the Dallas Cowboys? I was like, seriously? I was like, how am I going to tackle this 300-pound man? That's what I was thinking. I was going to jump on Leon's back, and he would have rolled me right out the back of the end zone, right? It would have been a football foul. But he made my job easy, and I always tell people that it happened right inside the 1 yard line. They didn't have replay that year, if you remember, so they couldn't replay it. but it happened. If I would have thought about it for just a split second, I'd have never made the play.
Yeah.
I just reacted. So I always tell kids that reaction is not something that is a light switch that you can just turn on and off. It's ingrained at you at a very young age by your coaches and your parents and peers, who you are. This creates this character, who you are. And I'll be honest with you, now that I'm in the recruiting game, I recruit character, number one, hands down, before I recruit talent. I'm going to win a lot more games when I recruit character. Now, if I have talent to go with that character, yeah, I'm going to be in the running of winning it all, whatever it all is. So, yeah, there's no question. Character is so evident in today's sports.
Have you and Leon obviously was involved in another play in the NFL that's pretty famous on a Thanksgiving Day as well. He had a couple, the misfortune being involved in two of those similar faux pas. Have you and Leon, besides the Super Bowl that came later, have you interacted through the years and talked about that play at all?
The very first time we met was 2 months after the Super Bowl. Austin Murphy, who's a writer for the Sports Illustrated, calls me. Would you be willing to do an article? It become such a big thing in America. I mean, I still listen, Keith. I still get letters today, 1 years, whatever it is now, 31 years later. I'm still getting letters every single day. Here's today's. This mail, fan mail.
That's
okay,
awesome.
Yeah, and every one of them, almost everyone talks about the Leon Lett play. I mean, it's nuts. The miles that play has gotten is crazy. So they asked if I'd be willing to do it. And I said, yeah, as long as Leon wants to do it, that's no problem. So we met in West Palm Beach, Florida at a coffee shop. I'm there early because I'm always early. And then walked this 300-pound man. This would be the first time I ever met him, right? I get up out of my chair, go over there, shake his hand. And I said, Leon, I just want you to know I'm Don Beebe. I agreed to do this as long as there be no physical abuse. So he was a very quiet, unassuming, gentle giant of a personality, to be honest with you. Yeah, great guy. So we really got to know each other. About 10 years after that, we met in Chicago for 3 days, spent 3 days together, filming some stuff. I've got to know Leon very well. I'm a big fan of Leon Lett. Let's just put it that way. What a great guy.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's fun. There's one more game I want to talk to about in Buffalo, because we talked about the Super Bowls and things piling on, right? But you guys have the greatest comeback in playoff history against Houston in the playoffs. What was it? I mean, again, it would fly against what we already talked about, although it wasn't a Super Bowl, still a big game. Why did that team, with your starting quarterback on the sideline, had you 35-3, if I remember right, against the Oilers at home? How does that team have the resilience to come back? What happened in that?
Well, 2 words: Frank Reich.
Yeah.
I had the inside story of that because I was Frank's roommate. So I remember, I'll never forget. I woke up. We usually, we'll wake up early on game day. We'll go down, get breakfast, have chapel, watch film, whatever. And this morning, when I woke up, he was gone already. And I was like, that was kind of strange. That that never happens. And so I put my shorts on, shirt on. I'm going down there with, no socks, no nothing. I'm walking downstairs trying to find him. Where's Frank? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, we've got, playoff game for crying out loud. And it's a cold, blustery, Buffalo morning in the middle of December, I think it was. And I go and I can't find him. And then I look out in the parking lot, and his S10 Blazer was smoke. Smoke was coming out of his muffler. So because it was really cold, and his windows were all fogged up. I was like, what in the world is he doing? So I walk out there, no shoes on, and I tap on his window, and I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, hey, Beebs. He goes, I got to write these words down to this song, And I was like, we're having a playoff game, and you're writing words down to a song. And the song was from Michael English, In Christ Alone. And so I was like, okay, Frank. He said, don't worry about it, Beebs. I'll tell you about it later. Okay, good. I'm good. So I walk away. Then comes the game, right? Last thing I thought about was that morning, we're getting our tails whooped.
Yeah.
But Frank was the one guy that just kept pacing, just walking up and down and not sitting down, nothing like this. And now, it's 28-3 at halftime, and Daryl's yelling at us and screaming at us, which he should have. And Frank was just, somebody said to Frank, hey, it was Coach Levy, actually. He says, you had the greatest comeback in college history. He said, go do the same in pro. That's what he said to him. And it was when he was at Maryland. He beat,
right.
I think, Miami, I think, in a great comeback. But so we go out there, and he's all fired up, and boom, throws a pick six to Bubba McDowell. Now it's 35-3. Okay. There ain't no way we're coming back. It was like, it got to the point where it was like, everybody was like, Frank, just sit down. Okay. But Frank kept pacing. Next thing you know, things just started to unravel for the Oilers. We score. Then we get the onside kick. Then Frank throws one to me. And then we stop him. And then he throws 3 in a row to Andre. And it just, like, in a matter of what felt like seconds, everything turned around. Now, again, Frank is a man of faith too. If you don't know that, he is. And we get into the locker room after this crazy, unbelievable game. And he's getting rushed down to the media thing. And he goes, stop, halfway down the stairs. He's like, stop, I got to go back. And he went and got those words to what he wrote down. And he's in front of everybody in national media. He wrote and he worded and he said the words to the song. So that was kind of the inside story of what was really going on. It was really how Frank used that whole comeback to never give up as well. I mean, we have 2 great never give up stories, him in the greatest comeback and me running down a guy in a blowout. But our message is the same. Never give up. And so it just really cool to see how Frank has used that story over the years to just not glorify himself, glorify something better than him. And that's his faith in Christ.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah. Yeah.
As we move on to your career in Green Bay, which was shorter, what precipitated you leaving Buffalo and moving
again? And this is why I love Coach Levy, because listen, when guys get cut now, well, even back then, you get cut, you feel sorry, you're mad at the world and everything like this. And when we do this in our society today, I mean, people just say something and we just take it all out of context. And it's like, they're so offended. I mean, it's like, come on, man. First of all, just get over yourself. Okay. Let's just put this bluntly. Okay. And you really don't know what that person, his intention is anyway, or her, or whatever she might have said. Well, Coach Levy, like a true man of character, instead of announcing it to the media or, like nowadays, texting you or emailing you or no.
Right.
Coach would bring you into his office. Matter of fact, he still writes me handwritten letters today. I mean, come on, who does that? He's 99 years old and he'll still write handwritten letters, right? That's nuts. So anyway, he brings me in his office, said, Don, man, you've had a great career here. Love you. He says, we're just going to move in a different, younger guys. And that's kind of the goal. Hey, listen, it's a business. I get it. And I shook his hand, gave him a hug and said, man, I appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for drafting me. Thank you for giving me a shot. Thanks for allowing me to stay here 6 years. I'm grateful. Okay. And then I went to Carolina for the year and then to Green Bay. But man, because of that, that's what makes men like Coach Levy great men. Is because he's a great man of character.
When you get to Green Bay, this is a weird question, I guess, but does a player like yourself take more pride in getting to 4 straight Super Bowls, even though you didn't win one, which is a great accomplishment in my mind? I'm always going to say that, or actually winning that one game?
Well, first of all, which is harder?
I would say the first one.
Yeah, no question about it. Matter of fact, I'll even go as far as saying this. How many teams have won back-to-back Super Bowls? Plenty. Plenty. Pittsburgh did it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, 49ers, Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of teams that fit into that category, but there's only one.
The Patriots played that division. Don't forget the Patriots.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. The
Patriots. Forgot the Patriots are done.
But hey, how many teams have gone to 4? Nobody. So when you're the only one to do something in sports history, whatever sport we're talking about, that's special. That team was special. And anybody that knows and understands football, they know that team was one of the greatest teams ever played in the National Football League, whether we won it or not. So your question is this, and that's an interesting question. Would I go back and go to 4 and lose 4, or go back to win and 1? Oof.
Tough.
Yeah, you know what? I think I would probably do the 4 only because it's never been done before. And to experience what we experienced, and you go through, when you go through adversity, let's say, it binds you together. It really brought, I mean, think about the core I just told you about that, takes Coach Levy to his 99th birthday. I mean, what sports teams do that? I can only think of one, and that would have been the 60s with Lombardi. Those guys, that I could compare that group, because I know a lot of those guys, and how they looked at Coach Lombardi was the same way we look at Coach Levy. It's the same relationship. That's rare. Yeah. That's really rare. So I would probably go back to that because of Coach Levy and what we had from a family standpoint. And don't get me wrong, Green Bay was awesome. I mean, Reggie is one of the greatest human beings you'll ever want to meet. He really was. And what we had, I mean, Leroy, I mean, all those guys, just amazing guys. And the organization, it was great. But you're asking me which I would choose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
it's an impossible choice maybe to make, but
yeah, nothing like going into camp, making reservations for January.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
No,
yeah.
That's
what I got to. Yeah.
And I want to get into it. Don, I know I told you an hour. Do you have a little time to go past a little bit?
I'm good. Yeah.
I don't want to, and we have some questions I want to get to at the end too.
Sure.
Before I move on to your post career a little bit, just tell me a little bit about, you played for two of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. I mean, Favre, you mentioned them before, Favre and Kelly. How are they different as quarterbacks and teammates?
Yeah. First of all, they have a lot more similarities than differences.
Yeah.
They're both linebacker mentality, playing quarterback position. I would say Brett was a little different style because he would get out of the pocket more and make plays, where Jim was pretty much a pocket passer. I love Brett, but Jim Kelly is my guy. And I'll tell you why. He's one of the most loyal people you'll ever meet. And I'll give you an example, because giving examples are the best to give you an insight, really what makes this man who he is I just won a Super Bowl with the Packers. So it was 2 years after I left playing with Jim. And I was with one of my best friends from high school. His name was Jeff Still. And I spent the night with Jeff and his brother Jim and my brother Dan. The four of us were inseparable when we were young, really young kids growing up together. And that's who I spent the night with before the Super Bowl, right? Because he was a huge Packer fan growing up. And 2 months after the Super Bowl, he got hit by a drunk driver and shoved all the way into the trunk of his car, and he didn't make it. So I lost Jeff, and I wanted to do something. He had two small boys, a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old boy, just devastated that we lost Jeff. And I wanted to do something to raise money because he was big into education. He was a high school football coach, and he was big into education. I wanted to do something to raise some money for his two small boys for their college fund, and just put it into an account and let it sit until they were ready for college. Well, first person I call is Jim, and said, Jim, look, I'm throwing this thing together. I'll put on a little bit of a football camp for a buddy of mine. He said, oh, Beebs, he goes, and I told him the dates, and he goes, I'm going to be in Miami, Florida. He says, I got to do something down there. He goes, I don't know if I can do it. And I said, hey, Jim, I get it. 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, he calls me back. Beebs, listen, I'm going to leave Miami a day early. I'm going to get back to Buffalo, grab my stuff, grab the morning flight out. I'll be there. I mean, who does that? I mean, think about that. He didn't have to do that. He had a great excuse to not be there. But because of the loyalty of the person of who he is, and that's Jim at a core, he never even thought about it, not being there. So Jim was there, Reggie White was there, and Eugene or Desmond Howard were the three guys I called. And we put on a great camp, raised thousands of dollars for these kids. And it was just an amazing person. So, Jim is just an awesome man. And what's happened to Jim through his life, losing Hunter, his son, at 8.5 years old, and beating cancer 3 times. Yeah. And just to see how he's transformed as a man of God has been amazing to be a part of. Really is. I'm just really, really proud to call him a friend.
How's Jim doing today, by the way? I haven't heard a lot about Jim since his last bout. Hope he's doing well.
No, he's doing incredible. Jim, I just saw him, obviously, at dinner with Coach. Doing incredible. His wife, Jill, is amazing. Has amazing family, 2 awesome daughters. and doing a lot for the community. I mean, it tells you a lot about Buffalo when a Jim Kelly says, Buffalo, I ain't never going there. He went to the Gamblers in Houston because he didn't want to go to Buffalo,
Right.
and now he lives there. That's all you need to know about Buffalo.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Don, is a great person. I'm glad he's doing well too, because he seems like, again, it's hard. There are people I respect. I wasn't a big Bills fan because I was a Patriot fan, but you still respect the opponents, right? That are like yourself and Jim and a lot of those guys.
Yep.
As your career is coming to an end, were you ready to leave the game when you left?
I was. I remember going into the last offseason because I just was praying in camp that year. And I was like, I always want to do what the Lord wants me to do instead of what I want to do. I'll be honest with you. I've learned he's much smarter than me. So I went into the camp last year and I said, Lord, if this is my last year, you got to take this desire to want to train and go to practice because it's just who I am. I love it. This is what I love to do, man. It's my passion. And I felt it start to wane that last year. And then the way the whole Super Bowl thing ended, Super Bowl 32 for me personally was a real slap in the face. And I think that happened because it kind of took that last edge in me. I had a chance to get on a plane and go to Oakland and maybe sign another year or two with the Oakland Raiders and John Gruden at that time. And I just decided that I decided no. I told my agent I was done. I had 3 kids now, 3 kids at that time. Now I have 4, but and it was the right decision. When it's the right decision, when you can look back 30 years later and say, yeah, that was the right decision. I had no regrets. I did everything I wanted to do and get everything I could out of my body. I got 0 regrets when it comes to playing football. I had a lot of fun. It's
amazing the number of guys I talk to that really don't have regrets, that, they got everything they could out of their career and they're happy with that. There's a few, but that maybe felt they left something there. But most of them are very happy with the way their lives turned out because of their path. When you retire, you started a business, House of Speed, which I think you referred to a little bit before when you were training players and such. Are you still doing that some today? Because I didn't see where it ended. It just said you started doing this and continue to do it. I did. I don't know if you could do that and coach at the same time. You're still doing it?
I started in 98 and then in 2021. So 23 years later.
Yeah.
I tried to do it for about a year and a half when I was a head coach at Aurora University, which I'm still there now. I just finished my 6th year there.
Yeah.
I tried to do it and it was crazy. I'm 55 years old and I'm working all day, leave practice at 6 and then, by the way, go train at 7:00 at night. I barely got dinner in. I love working, but that was getting crazy for me. So I had to stop doing House of Speed after 23 years and just became a full-time college coach.
Well, your coaching career itself, it started an interesting way at Aurora Christian schools, and you got the chance to coach with your brother, David, and if I got it right, David was a defense coordinator, Dan was the AD.
Yep.
What drove you to do that, get into coaching? What was the drive for you to get into coaching in the first place?
Yeah, good question. So when I retired in 98, I knew I wanted to be around sports, and I knew I had a calling to impact young adults, young kids. And what better way to do than training kids? And so this was in 98 now. Remind me, training speed for kids was a complete unknown then.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing this.
Right.
And Dr. Shute, my partner, and I, we just talking over lunch. And I was like, hey, let's start a business that trains athletes. So House of Pain was kind of a cool name. My wife, House of Pain. I said, how about House of Speed? And that was it. It just came literally over dinner. And that's where it came from. So we started training it. But you know what? After 6 years of doing it, Keith, I just felt like training a kid one time a week was not enough to impact a person. So what better way to do that than coach? The opportunity opened up over at Aurora Christian. It was a dilapidated building. It had no football field. It had no weight room. And it had 17 kids in the whole football program from freshmen through seniors. And I was like, God, really? I was like, no, please. Can I really do this? I mean, seriously? So I had doubts, but yet when I'm all in, man. I mean, I'm pedal to the metal type of guy. So we did. Me and my brother, I called him. I said, let's go coach. He owned an IT company, which he still does. And we just volunteers. We volunteered there for 14 years. He's still coaching. He just finished his 21st
He's
year.
still there. I know he took over for you. Yeah.
He's the head coach now. He took it over when I left.
Yeah.
And we turned this, what we call the Bad News Bears on steroids, and just inspiring young men, because talent doesn't win. Okay. Inspiring a young man. What wins is what beats in your chest and what you think in your mind. That's what wins. And that's all coaches can do. Coaches don't win football games. Players win the games. All coaches can do is change the way you think and give you passion and heart and create a culture of winning, right? So learning from great coaches like Coach Levy, that's all I did. I just stole from Coach, how to do that. And that first year, we went 10-2 and went all the way to the quarters. And this was a team that had never won a playoff game. There was 2 teams in their own conference they hadn't even beat. And we went on a 10-year run, and we're still the only team in Aurora history. And Aurora is the second largest city in Illinois outside of Chicago. We're still the only team in Aurora that has ever won. And I think there's 8 high schools that has ever won a state championship. And Aurora Christian's been to 3 and won 2. So it's really kind of cool to see what Dave, my brothers, and I were able to kind of just create really out of nothing. But to see where the program is today, I mean, they have a beautiful football field, an incredible locker room, an incredible weight room. Just really, really cool to see Aurora Christian where it is today.
This seems like a story similar to Hoosiers in basketball when you look at it from what you took it from to what it is, I guess.
It's been compared to that. I mean, articles had come through the years, in the early years especially.
Yeah.
It was somewhat, very similar to that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you move on from there and you go to Aurora, which I guess is your alma mater. I said it yesterday and I was like, is it really his alma mater? Because I couldn't figure out that.
One of them. One of them.
I couldn't understand why I kept seeing Aurora College as one of your colleges, but now I understand. So you go back to your alma mater, or one of them, and you've been, I guess you could call it successful, when you're 51-10 and never lost a conference game. And how many years you've been there now?
6.
Never lost a conference.
Yeah.
You haven't been over the top of a championship necessarily, but you've had some great success.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't. The credit is not it. I did. All I did was, if I was smart enough to do something, it was smart enough to take notes from people smarter than me. And I just learned. I mean, that's part of life. I mean, you learn from others. Don't think you got all the answers, because I don't, and I never will. And I never want to change that way of thinking. I just learned from, coaches that I had, father figure that is still alive at 87 years old. I still learn from, that inspires me. So all I want to do, if I never want to lose, the ability to care, because when people know that you care, they're willing to listen. Like I said earlier. And when you I've always said that if you could take a kid that has half the talent of this guy that has a lot of talent, but this guy here, he doesn't have passion. He just gets up out of bed and he looks like LeBron James. I mean, he's just a stud. Okay. But he doesn't have passion and heart. But this guy here, he's a lunch pail guy. He's coming every day. I'm going to kick your tail almost every time with this guy, and I want this guy. Now, if you could take what this guy has and put him in that, character or that high talented person, well, now you're there to win a Super Bowl and, national championships and state championships. So you just got to find that right guy. I mean, that's my biggest job, is to find that right fit of a person for what we're looking for, and then go with the talent. And so I don't know, those days at Aurora Christian really molded me as a coach. I learned a lot going through that. But now here at Aurora, I love Aurora University. I'm having the time of my life coaching these young men. I say this quite often. We don't have any knuckleheads. Okay. We just don't. They don't last very long.
It's impossible. But
yeah. Knucklehead is a guy that shows up when he wants to. He sleeps in meetings.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, those are knuckleheads. They don't go to class. We just finished our last semester, and our average GPA of 114 guys was a 3.27. Yeah, that's crazy. 54% of our football team was a 3.5 or higher. Yeah, that's impressive. When these kids are
you take more pride in that than your record?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. I'm not here to win football games. I'm not. If I was in this business to win football games, I look at that as pretty shallow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just not who I am, and that's never the way I want to approach it. I'm here to mentor young men, and part of that is getting good grades. You're going to go out of here and you're going to have a degree, period. And I promise every parent that they're going to do that. If I have anything to do with it, they're going to get good grades. Because I know if they're going to class, I know if they're turning in their homework. I know that because professors, they know that I care, and they reach out to me and tell me. And then that young man is in my office and we're talking about it. Why are you not going to class? Why are you not turning your homework in? So I care. I want them to come out of here, because when you learn these attributes, automatically it's going to make you a better father. It's going to make you a better husband. It's going to make you a better employer. It just does. Again, it's not that light switch we can just turn on and off. It's a year in, year out, day in, day out process of developing who you become.
Do you think, and is it even possible for that approach should be taken at the higher levels of college football as well?
Absolutely.
Can it be?
Well, is it harder? I'll say yes. I think that's probably why a guy like Nick Saban, part of the reason, and I don't know Nick, probably got out. He saw that he saw that it was becoming an NFL process, and to the highest bidder goes. It's sad because we're teaching young adults wrong principles of life and how to treat people. I'm sorry, it's just wrong.
Agreed.
I don't care what anybody says, it's wrong. So it's just sad to see that. But I'm never going to lose that way of, there's always going to be people and young adults that want to listen, that want to do it the right way and develop who they are as a person. Matter of fact, I had a kid last year. His name was Jalen Jordan, our star defensive tackle. He was a junior. He said, Coach, he goes, I want to put myself in the portal. And it came to me as quite a shock. And I always ask why. I always want to know the why, because there's a lot of answers to that question. And he says, I just want to know what it feels like to come out in front of 80,000 people. And I said, well, I can't give you that. Okay. But I said, I'll tell you what, Jalen, because that's a dream of yours and that's what you want to do. If an FBS school, let's go try to find one. If an FBS school gives you a full ride scholarship, because at our school at Division III, you got to pay to play, right? Right. So, and they give you a full ride, and you're going to play, because I know you, Jalen, you're not going to want to go to this FBS and not play. That would be a big mistake, right? If you can find that, I said, I'll help you pack. Well, he got 4 FCS offers. Okay. They weren't going to give him the 80,000 people that he said. And he held true to his word. He had 4 full ride scholarships and he turned them all down to stay at AU to play. Now that's a man of character to me, right? They're not just, he knew what he really wanted. It wasn't about, he just wanted to know what it felt like, run out in Notre Dame or whatever that is. Well, so but most guys, and what people don't realize is kids at D3 level that have this dream to go D1 or FBS or FCS, and they leave in the portal. It's like 8 or 9 out of 10 of them never play again, let alone go to a team. They never play again because they can't find a home. So it's very dangerous grounds, and kids don't know that, but I don't know. I'm all for nil money. I mean, if a kid can make money, I just would put limits on it.
Yeah.
Somebody's making the money and the money's going somewhere. So who better to give it to some kids to help them out a little bit? But what it's gotten to is ridiculous. Okay. When these kids are the penthouse and driving around Lamborghinis and they're 19 years old,
$10 million to transfer.
Yeah. What are we teaching them? What are we teaching them?
No,
I'm all for just limit it,
It is your passion for what you're doing, what you've done, and what you're doing is inspirational, Don. I have to say, I want to give you a chance to talk about the books. You wrote a book, as I mentioned, 6 Rings from Nowhere, and also a couple of devotional books, Never Give Up, and what was he?
In His Image.
His Image, yep.
Yeah.
And I want to give you a chance to chat about those. And I know there's a movie project in the works for the first one. So talk about that a little bit.
So, Yeah, so I wrote Six Rings from Nowhere years ago after winning the Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. More Than a Ring was a book that came out right away in '97, and then it morphed into Six Rings from Nowhere because my life is about six rings from nowhere. And then just recently, over the last 8 months or so, I was approached by this company called Kaifek out of Nashville to write a wide receiver book. Believe it or not, and I was like, I got no interest. To write idea, sure, I could write one, but I don't really want to. But the whole idea came to me about, gosh, there's a lot of devotionals out there, but there's not a lot of devotionals that are written by a former player. There's athletic devotionals, there's dad devotionals, mom devotionals, marriage devotionals, there are all kinds of them, right? In fact, I just got one for Christmas, Stand Firm devotional. So
Stand Firm.
There's all kinds of them. So this whole idea about athletics and the never give up story. I mean, how can I turn this in that would inspire athletes or anybody really? Because life is all about never giving up. And so I did write. I wrote this devotional right here. It's called Never Give Up, and I put on the cover of it the play. The Leon running them down, and this is it's a very simple read. Okay, it takes you a few minutes to read one, and there's only 12. There's only 12 devotionals, and these are life stories that have happened to me. And I let it off with the Leon Let Play, obviously. But there's other things that have happened to me in my career and life that helps people navigate. And then they wanted me to do another one on dads. So I did. I wrote this one here. It's called In His Image. It's a dad's devotional. And it just tells me as a father, having a great dad, and then the ultimate dad, that what the experience that I went through as a dad, how did I navigate through that as a father with my 4 kids and now 5 grandkids. And so I wrote that, and it's been great. I'll be honest with you. And it's now morphed into Salty Earth Pictures came to me, and they asked if they could have the rights to Don Beebe's story. And I said, yes, after several meetings with them. And they've wrote the script already. The script is written. And they're taking funding right now, and it's gonna be starting film. Obviously, they're gonna say maybe sometime early 26, and by the end of 26, early 27. I think the running title right now is Running for Glory, or Run for Glory.
Run for Glory, yeah.
And listen, I'll be honest with you, Keith. I never thought I was a book guy or a movie guy. It's just not me. But if I can use that platform to impact young people or anybody, I'm all for that. I could care less about me. I could care less what it does for me. I don't really. I'm good with life. I got a great wife and great kids, so I don't need anything other than that. So, but if it inspires other people to help them, especially after COVID and what we went through 4 years ago, I mean, I just saw so many people just quitting, and I just don't want to. I don't like to see that.
That's a great attitude and wonderful. By the way, I can't not ask this: has your part been cast? And if not, who would you like to see play you?
We haven't got that far yet, but when it does, I'll let you know. So,
I mean, I think of somebody that can play Don Beebe through. I'm assuming this. Does it cover your whole life, or is it like?
Yeah. Right now, it goes from, when I was roughly a young boy playing in mom's backyard, pretty much.
Yeah.
And all the way up until draft day. Yeah. So I think that's where they're going to go.
A younger guy. Can't be a Rock, right? It can't be The Rock. We know that. So
yeah. Because when you're dealing with the NFL, I mean, we'd love to be able to do stuff, show stadiums and games and stuff like that. But as soon as you deal with the NFL, it costs a fortune.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, you just never be able to do that stuff. So you gotta do these things very discreetly and not use their image, let's say, and offend anybody. So,
well, I'm excited because I have got the books. I haven't got a chance with the rush of the holidays and everything going on to really get into them, but I'm going to, and I'm excited to see this movie come out. So, great stuff. And let me get to a couple of the questions that were in these. Sure. I don't think there was too many. A couple of them I put up. And I say good morning. I think I put everybody's good morning up. Welcome, everybody. Don, I'm sorry. Michael Gott had a question for Don. What are your thoughts about the new stadium being built? And will you have some mixed emotions with the old stadium going away? And you're sad. Are you sad that my taxpayer? No, that's my question. My taxpayer dollars will pay for it. That's just you could.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's a great question in itself. I'm very sad. I mean, Rich Stadium, it's always going to be Rich Stadium. And to see that get tore down is very disheartening, to say the least. It's just part of the world we live in. We're always trying to build bigger and better and all that stuff. And the stadium they have right now is phenomenal. Really is. I think it's one of the great stadiums to play in as a player. Yeah. Because those people are so loud and so obnoxious, and it's awesome.
I've been there as a visiting fan, and it is an experience you have to experience to really appreciate it. I can tell you,
it really is. It's a cool stadium to go back to and just watch a game. Same thing with Lambeau. I mean, Lambeau is amazing too. But I wish they wouldn't. No, it'll never be the same for me, and for all those things, it's never going to be the same.
I hate seeing these baseball, football. I hate seeing all these old stadiums disappear. There's so much character in them. Bob Hildberg, who's a great Patriot and historian, by the way, talks about Danny Woodhood, you talked about earlier, 1,199 regular season yards and 10 rushing touchdowns with the Patriots over the 3 seasons that he was there.
Danny's a stud.
Great player. And in Columbus, our resident Ohio State fan says he wants to know if you remember the hit from Felix Wright of the Browns in a divisional playoff game at Cleveland. Sorry. I still believe the Browns should have been the Browns' ball. Apparently, Ed's holding a little grudge here. I don't know.
So, but listen, it's funny that you bring that up, Keith, or Ed does here. I remember it like it was yesterday. I still have ill effects in my neck. It ripped my neck muscle. So every once in a while, my right side locks up here, and I got to get it worked on because there's still scar tissue in there. However, it's funny you say this because I remember being on a plane, and I want to say it was McNally, the referee, head of referees at that time in the late 80s, early 90s. And I saw him on a plane, and nobody knew how to make this call. You think about this, nobody knew how to make this call of what had happened, because for people that are listening that don't remember it, I was coming across the middle right before halftime. Jim threw it a little bit high, went up to try to get it. I was about 18 yards down the field. Excuse me. And I went to catch the ball, and my feet got cut underneath me by Felix Wright, the safety of the Cleveland Browns. And I landed literally right on, you can YouTube it. And they started calling me pogo stick, because I landed on my head and it bounced off my head and it came off the ground. And then the ball popped out. So what they called was an incomplete pass. That's the only thing that it couldn't have been. Okay, it couldn't have been an incomplete pass. Either A, it was down by contact, or B, it was an interception, because the ball popped up and he caught the ball and the ball never hit the ground. But the referee, I saw him on a plane, and he came, and I was coming up to him, and he saw me coming, and he goes, "It was a catch." I was like, well, you didn't even know I was going to ask you. He goes, "Yeah, I do." He goes, they study all these plays at the end of the year. These obscure plays, they study them, and this is one of them. And he says, "You were down by contact." I personally didn't care, but it was either that or an interception. It was definitely not an incomplete pass.
You mentioned before I go on to some other comments, you mentioned your lingering effects. Were there a lot of players have had lasting injuries that affect them, or things that affect them later in life? We know about CTE and all this. Have you had other things that have affected you in your post-career physically?
You know what? I'm not one to complain, Keith. I'll be honest with you. Everybody has these issues, but I try to take care of myself as good as I can. I got a phenomenal wife that is amazing. That supports and really helps me a lot. I'm doing great. I'll be honest, at 60, I feel great.
And you look great at 60. I
appreciate that. But I really do. Life is good. And I got no complaints.
Were you okay with your son going into, he played Division I school, I believe, at Northern Illinois, and then in the NFL with the Vikings and Texans, maybe, mostly with the Vikings. You're okay with your son? I know, players who have played and seen the physicality and the way some people come out of the game. You're okay with your son playing after you?
Yeah, I never. I remember, when we had a boy and he started growing up, and he was very, very talented at a very young age. But when he was a freshman, he was 5'1", 106 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, very small. And we never watched any of my games. Still to this day, we've never watched any of the old Bills or Packer games together. It just wasn't. I didn't want to put. He was already going to have that undue pressure. As a father, why would I put more on that? So we never really talked about that stuff. I just remember after his freshman year, I asked him. I said, "Son, what do you want to do?" It's the first time I wanted to ask him. What do you want to do after high school? He goes, I want to play football. And I was like, okay, great, let's do it, right? And he goes, I said, at what level? He goes, I want to play in the biggest stadiums possible. So I said, you want to play Division I? He says, yeah. And he goes, I said, do you have dreams? And he goes, yeah, I would love to play National Football League. Now, again, 5'1", 106. I'm thinking there's no way. But one thing you cannot measure is his heart and his passion. And I told Chad, I said, if that's what you want to do, then Dad's going to have to really work with you. I mean, we're going to have to spend a lot of time together, and I'm going to have to train you, and we're going to do these things. I said, I'm never going to wake you up one time. I'm not going to push you one time. I'm not going to make you do this or make you do that. You're going to make me. You're going to wake me up. Okay. And then I'll work with you. I never had to. In all his years, I never had to push him one time because it wasn't about me. It was about Chad. And I never wanted him to think that. So, and I would say this, Keith, if there was a better story than mine, as far as never giving up and coming from obscurity and stuff like that, it was Chad's. From his sophomore year through his fourth year with the Minnesota Vikings, 11 of his 12 years of playing football, his season ended with reconstructive surgery or a season-ending injury. 11 of 12. I've never seen anything like it, but yet every single time he came back stronger than ever.
Yeah, that plays into Rick's, Rick, who's a big Vikings fan, Rick Sherlock, by the way. He loved your son's fire and effort while he was a Viking. And you just talked about whether the injuries hurt his career. It seems obvious that it did. With that type of.
I mean, he takes my story to another level. I'll be honest with you. And I use him quite often with my players because, they're willing to throw their towel in when they get redshirted or medical leave or whatever it is or they're not playing, they're not fitting in or whatever it is. I mean, do you realize that everybody that ever plays sports is going to feel those feelings at some point in time in their career? But most, they quit.
Yeah.
In today's age of the athlete, it's gotten more of that because there's so much pressure on these kids to perform and play. It's crazy. God, back in my day, man, we just loved playing in the backyard. And that's the way we approached it when we played, even in the NFL. I mean, we were just kids out there playing, man. Now it's just become too much of a pressure and business and money. And
money corrupt. Yeah, corrupts.
It does. But I'm proud of my son that he never quit and never gave up because of all the injuries that he had. He just kept going.
That's great. And Rick always wants to know who the craziest teammate you may have played with.
Craziest teammate?
Yeah.
Boy, Daryl Talley would be up there. Daryl was crazy, but man, was he awesome to play with. He was just a good dude, really good guy. But he would be right up there. Crazy. Brett Favre was crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine Favre would be one of those guys.
I mean, you've seen the YouTube videos on Brett. He's a funny dude now. That guy was a funny dude.
I have to ask you, I guess, that you bring this up. What are your thoughts on this whole Favre Gastineau thing?
Oh, geez. Oh, I think we just touched on this, right? I mean, we got hurt feelings over something that Brett got sacked. I mean, come on, get over it.
30 years ago, I mean,
who cares?
Right?
I mean, really, who cares? Is that really the hill you're willing to die on? I mean, I think there's more important things in life than money, than fame, than fortune, whatever. I mean, those are great, fine, but they can't outweigh character, caring about your neighbor, your family. I mean, there's just, I would have if I was Mark, I would have said, Brett, man, nice to meet you, man. You're a heck of a football player, Oh, and by the way, I would have ribbed him a little bit, just having fun.
Yeah, sure.
But I wouldn't have. Yeah.
I mean, holding a grudge like that has got to hurt you physically, mentally, however,
Well, one thing I've learned in life, Keith, is that when people hold grudges, what lands up happening is it affects you more than it affects that person.
Yeah. What do they care? They don't care most of them, right?
And I will also add to this that everybody who's ever walked this earth at some point in time could hold a grudge against somebody.
Without
Everybody.
a doubt. Without a
So
doubt.
why live your life like that? It's crazy.
Negative energy, just it's wasted energy, right? It's
Wasted.
just, yeah, for
It is
sure. I
wasted.
try to tell people that work for me that. Michael says there's a great YouTube video out there for Don Beebe on YouTube. I found there's a lot of them out there, but this one highlights 15 minutes. It's titled "White Flash the Hustler." Shows you Don's famous play knocking the ball from Leon Lett, which we've talked about, obviously. So listen, you guys want to see more of Don's highlights, just go to YouTube. There's a few there, more than a few. We talked about that. Let's see, where was I? Hey, Don, what do you think about Josh Allen and the Bills? There's a good question.
Yeah, I love him. I absolutely love Josh Allen. I love the style of play. I love the way he approaches the game. He doesn't care about his body. He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about anything. That dude just wants to win.
A little like
And
Brett Favre.
He's a lot like Brett Favre and Jim. I mean, just so much like those two. Buffalo is very fortunate to have Josh Allen, no doubt.
Fits the city of Buffalo very well, Josh Allen. Sure.
Hey, listen, and he's a dangerous threat. As long as he's standing, they got a chance. They got to keep him healthy. But he is.
Did you see a difference in him this year? I see a difference in him. He still plays with wild abandon sometimes, but he's more in control and doesn't make the big mistake, it seems, this year. Yeah.
Well, I mean, two things. One, it's coaching, and two, it's maturity.
Yeah.
I mean, he's matured. I mean, he's just a gun. I mean, look, I look at Brett and how he morphed into what he became. You know, and I always said this, that if Brett Favre didn't have Mike Holmgren as his coach, we would have never known Brett Favre. And that's the honest truth. Mike taught him the game. Mike taught him how to be a quarterback instead of just a gunslinger and just having fun. The same thing could be said about Josh. You know, Josh is a reckless abandon. I mean, he just loves to go out there and play, and he's gotten smarter, and he's made better decisions. Listen, great quarterbacks do two things very well. Okay. They make great decisions, and they got great timing on their throws. When they can do those two things, you know, how big their arm is and how athletic they are and all these things. I mean, look at Tom Brady. He's the greatest of these two areas. Him and Peyton Manning are the two greatest of these areas. Okay, great timing in the throws and tremendous decision makers. And that's what made him great. Now, because, you know, you could look at Peyton and say, well, he didn't have a big arm. Doesn't matter. Who cares? He never really threw a tight spiral, and he never really could spin it very well. Who cares? That doesn't make a great quarterback. What makes a great quarterback is great timing and great decision making, period.
100%.
Yep.
James Martin talks about, he wants to say hello, and he loved those teams and the great teams you played for in the 90s. That's a repeat. There's something interesting coming up here I want to get to. Just watch a clip of Don's catch in 93 on YouTube. Big hit from Steelers Gary Jones. How did you hold on to that football? You remember all the big hits?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember them. Michael, great question. I used this one. This was people ask me this all the time. What was the greatest hit you ever took? No doubt. It was Gary Jones on Monday Night Football against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. So I wish I'd have kept the helmet, because they had to take my face mask off because it bent my face mask.
Oh, jeez.
So people ask me, what's it like catching a ball? I said, it's kind of like being in a car accident. No, not making fun of or, you know, making light of a car accident.
I get it.
But it's very similar. Very similar. And I've been in a car accident when my head went flying up and hit the windshield and shattered the windshield. So it's like, it kind of felt like that.
Well,
yeah,
to compare it to.
Certainly not making light of it, but
no, I get it. I can see why that would be. Ed also would like to know if you'd like to come and coach and fix the Browns.
You know, back in 2005, I had a chance to go coach in the NFL. Coach Levy called me the night before he announced he was going to be the GM. It was in January of 2006 or late 2005 that he was going to be the GM of the Buffalo Bills. And I told Coach, I said, Coach, man, what an honor that you would actually call me. And if I go coach, I could have done that 18 years ago. I turned it down, and I'm so glad I did. I would much rather coach at Aurora Christian High School as a volunteer and now coaching at Aurora University. If I was to do it all over again, I would do the exact same thing. I loved what I have been able to do and be a part of with these young adults and kids. So, I mean, I was never driven by fame and money and, NFL. It was great. I loved it. But I'm not driven by that stuff. So sorry, Ed, I'm not going to go to Cleveland.
Well, Ed also is a little delusional because he learns from me. He says, so that you don't want to learn from me, Ed. I keep telling you, and it took me 64 years to learn anything. That's my problem. Jeez. So, but I appreciate the thought. We do have time for this question for sure, Michael. But dealing with young people, what's more important? Inspiration? I'm not sure. What is more
inspiration
important?
or empowerment?
Inspiration or empowerment. Interesting question.
Well, they kind of both, really. I would probably choose inspiration. I think inspiring a young adult to believe in I really believe this. The two biggest reasons why people don't make it, and we're talking football right now, but this could be anything in life. The two biggest reasons why people don't make it. Number one, they don't think they can. You got to believe that you can.
Sure.
Because if you don't believe you can, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. You got to believe it. And number two, people are just too lazy. Now, you don't know how hard you got to work to be great at whatever that is. So if you can accomplish believing that you can, and then go work as hard as you can to achieve it, you're going to be good at something. You're going to be good at something. I had a dad tell me one time, Keith, in my office when I was recruiting his son, he said, man, aren't you kind of building pipe dreams in these young kids? And I looked at him, I said, please don't take this wrong, but I'm glad you weren't my dad. My dad would have never said that. My dad would have said, son, you don't have to be the best. Just train hard to be the best that you can be. And that's all I ask of my players. I just ask that you try. Just try. Doesn't matter. Not everybody's going to get a 4.0.
Yeah.
But everybody can get good grades. You just got to try. So, that's the way I've just approached life. So inspiring people to do that, I think is a big starting point for sure.
And as you said, it translates into every part of life, right? I mean, relationships, jobs, everything. So it really does. And Carlos talks about Brett having a ton of support on that staff, which you talked about, and I'll kind of lead into this. You talked about on Holmgren's staff, Andy Reid, but you mentioned John Gruden was on that staff. You had a chance maybe to go plug for him later. Didn't. Mariucci was on that staff. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I feel like there was at least one other head coach that was on that staff.
Mike Sherman.
Mike Sherman, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys. I mean, and they all come from Bill Walsh because that's where Mike came from.
Tremendous coaching tree.
Yeah, it really was.
Listen, I want to thank you, Don, for spending some extra time with us. And this has been an inspirational and very informative and inspirational time that we spent here. I hope you've had as much fun as I have. And you guys have all been great with your comments. Don, check out Don's books. You can get them. Can we get them all on Amazon? I think I found one of them on Amazon.
6 Rings from Nowhere you can get on Amazon. But the only way to get the devotionals for dads and athletes is at donbeebe.com. That's the only place you can get them right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That explains why I couldn't find those, and I will grab those as well. And we'll be looking forward to the movie. Don, I thank you so much. Hang on one second. I'll say a proper goodbye to you. I want to say goodbye to all you guys. I'll see you Sunday. It's a little loud. I'll see you Sunday morning with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Next week, we have Richard Todd, former Jet quarterback. And in 2 weeks, one of my favorites, Tony Collins, former New England Patriot. Our thanks to Don Beebe, and we'll see you guys Sunday. Have a great rest of your holiday weekend, if you will. See you later, guys.